Hi, welcome to this edition of Blues Talk. Again, John, Dave, and myself are going to look back over Leinster's comprehensive victory against the Glasgow Warriors last weekend, all the other URC quarterfinals, and of course, look forward to our semi-final against the Bulls and Ulsters against the Stormers. So, gents, 76-14 against Glasgow in the RDS on Saturday afternoon. John, you must have been in seven heaven watching 12 tries stroll in past you.
Yeah, I was. It was great. I would have liked a bit of more committed. I'm sure you would, Jason, have liked a bit of a more committed Glasgow Warriors. We were actually losing the game, as you probably remember, until Ricky Gray did a very silly one and got sent off. And I said to the guy beside me, well, hopefully now it'll be 14-7 by the time this 10-minute period is up, and it was actually 21-7, and that was all she wrote. It ended up 173-0 in the second half. But yeah, I know what you're going to say, Jason, and you're right to an extent. Who wants to see, us beat the shit out of Glasgow by 76 points and then fall short against La Rochelle when the chips are down? And maybe we'll see how we do against the Bulls and possibly anyone else after that. But yeah, I love seeing Leicester score tries, and at the time, some of those tries were lovely. It was great to watch them, but a bit like Super Rugby, we used to say about Super Rugby, defence is optional, and defence was a little bit optional for Glasgow. The heads went down at a certain point, and
defence. There wasn't even a hedge. Ha ha.
Lovely hedge in the RDS. How could you say that? It just didn't get involved with defence.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there's two ways to look at it. One, Leinster. It's not Leinster's problem. Well, Leinster can't make the opposition play better or defend better. So, they did what they had to do. They went out there. They were playing a poor enough team. So they went for them and they went through them for a shortcut. Whether that raises a greater question about the quality of the opposition, the quality of their attitude. I think it's more attitudinal. I think you could see by what happened to Danny Wilson the next day or 2 days later, that whatever was happening in that club, the club itself weren't happy about it. So, I don't know. All we can do is beat the opposition that's put in front of us, and we did, and we beat them well, and we played really well. And guys we were hoping would play well did, and guys we weren't sure about all played well. So, it is what it is.
What's the answer, though? Yeah. I know you probably don't have one, but what is the answer? Like Dave said, we can't make the opposition play any better. So what's the cure?
No, look, I don't know what the answer is, but I think that first of all, I have to acknowledge that Leinster are an absolutely exceptional team, and the vast majority of teams in Europe would struggle with them when they're on song and when they're playing, when they're highly motivated, when they obviously they manage to put the disappointment of Marseille behind them. Lots of other teams don't do that. Like I think I said it last week, Ulster were beaten by Toulouse in the Champions Cup, and the following week were beaten by Munster up in Ravenhill. A couple of weeks after that, Munster were beaten by Toulouse, and they had a week off, and they played us the following week in the Aviva, and were also beaten. So a lot of teams, it's very hard to come back and remotivate themselves. They're not machines; they're human beings, and when they put all their eggs into the basket of the European Cup, it's very hard to come back and raise the game for a league game. But Leinster did do that. I think they were probably lucky that it was a knockout game rather than another league game. But so you have to first of all take your hat off to Leinster for the coaches and the senior players for motivating the team to put in a performance like that, to play with that level of ruthlessness, and they kept it going right till the end. Epitomized by Frawley chasing down the guy who made a break and made the tackle. The easiest thing in the world for him to do would be just to put his hands on his hips and start jogging back behind the line, but he didn't. He showed huge amount of conviction to make that tackle, to get back, and determination. And obviously somebody who is, again, highly motivated because he presumably wants to start in the semi-final and the final of this competition and go on tour to New Zealand. And that's a testimony to the coaching staff, that they've got the players at that level of devotion to the cause, I suppose. But
Yeah, that
going
was
back to your
actually,
question, John,
I do have to
going
say,
back to you,
amidst all the great stuff we saw, that was kind of one of the highlights for me because, as you say, that demonstrated like the attitude and the culture within the club.
100%, yeah. Going back to your question, John, I've no answers. Like, like I just had a look in the Gallagher Premiership last weekend. Like at the weekend, Saints beat Newcastle 65-26. Gloucester beat Sarries 54-7, and Sale beat Bristol 42-19. So, large score lines do occur in all leagues. So, we beat Montpellier in the Champions Cup. Okay, admittedly they sent over their thirds or their fourth team in January, but still that was a European Cup match. Um, these anomalies do happen, but I think like the introduction to the South African teams is a fill me up for this league, and like we have to buy into it because every other country's league is bigged up by their media. Like Matt Williams was excellent on off the ball. I'm sure you didn't hear it, Dave, but for anyone who listened to it, Matt Williams really went to town on the Irish media over their coverage of the Leinster performance in the Champions Cup, and also the coverage that the URC gets. And as he's talking about this, your man Gilroy turns the conversation back to the Heineken Cup, ignoring the URC. So I just thought that was quite ironic.
Yeah, in a 16 team league, if you have an 8-team playoff where the first team plays the 8th team, there's going to be a bit of imbalance there, especially if the first team is a really good team and the 8th team is, military medium. Not necessarily us versus Glasgow, but it could be, any good team against any mediocre team, So you're going to get that. But it's unfortunate. It doesn't look good for the league, which is a pity because the other games were pretty good, although I don't think Munster will be very happy with how they went. But they were good games. Look, it was a nice sunny day. Sun was shining. A bit of green sward in front of you and lots of running rugby. At the end of the day, you take your points, or in this case, you take your win and you look to the next round. And the next round is the interesting round.
It is. But like before we just move on to that, like you do have to tip your hat again to someone like Jordan Larmour. He's just come back from injury. He put in a man of the match performance a couple of weeks ago in the Munster match. And he was outstanding again. Like every time he gets the ball, he's exciting. He creates something. Not only did he score 2 tries, I think he gave he gave the scoring pass on 3 other occasions. So he was like exceptional in his display. And it's great to see him back after he'd been kind of usurped maybe on the team, hit with injuries, lost his place, certainly lost his Ireland place. You question whether or not he was going to get picked in the Champions Cup team, so he's come back with, again, he could easily have put his head down and said, I'm out of here, I've lost my place, I won a Grand Slam for Ireland not so long ago, but he didn't. He wants to work hard and put in big performances to force his way back into the starting team again.
Well, that's it. I mean, he's gone from a guy that's been debated about as not even a starter, but as a guy who makes the match day 23, to a guy who's kind of pushed himself into the line for selection for the trip to New Zealand, particularly seeing as Michael Lowry now looks like he's going to miss it. So he's timed his run very, very well. I think it benefits him. I know we tried him at fullback. I don't think it really worked. Now, here's the question. Just before he got kind of injured, he did suffer a dip in form. The question is, did the dip in form influence how he played at fullback? Did playing at fullback cause the dip in form? But because right now, back on the wing, he looks unstoppable.
Yeah,
he does.
I'd have him on the wing every time. Fullback is a kind of a specialist position. I know back 3 players tend to move around these days, and it's like a position. People say back 3 as if it's one position. And they do have to cooperate in the defense, especially. But like he's more of he's a kind of, I suppose you'd say he's a Jordan Murphy / Christian Cullen / whoever type fullback, attacking fullback rather than a great solid defensive fullback who's Rob Garney, for example. Need we look any further? Gervin Dempsey, we've turned out a string of them. So I think he's well paired, maybe with a big winger on the far side like James Lowe. So you've got two guys with big boot like James Lowe and whoever's fullback, Keenan or whoever. You've got guys who are positionally good. Well, Keenan is excellent positionally. And then you've got him who can run around people and is also good and
And let's not forget the incumbent, who's been pretty damn good this season, Jimmy O'Brien.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a nice position to be in, actually, because, we're losing some guys next year, guys who play on the wing a lot, like Adam Byrne and Rory O'Loughlin, who I think is an excellent player, and would be sorely missed. But, you've got Lowe, you've got Jimmy O'Brien, you've got Jordan Larmour, and you've got Tommy O'Brien next season. I think Tommy O'Brien's going to be a live contender for a starting spot, or certainly a first 23 spot in European rugby. So it's nice to see Jordan come back at this, trying to throw himself into the mix, because it's going to be interesting.
For sure.
It sure will. It's certainly his form has come back at a very appropriate time, especially with the Tour to New Zealand coming up, and even say Larry's injury up in, I think he's out for the Tour, or there's certain rumours that he's out for the Tour. So there's obviously a spot there, as you say, in that back three position for someone like Larry, who kind of forced his way out. Well, speaking of Ulster, they beat Munster 36-17. The Van Grain reign is over. I'm sure there's rejoicing. They're lighting bonfires on the hills all around Clare and Ennis and Limerick. But seriously, you'd question, should they have pulled the plug on him when he announced he was leaving back in January? I mean, hindsight's great, but with the exception of a couple of results maybe against Exeter and the Toulouse performance, they haven't really done much, have they?
No, but then the other side of that, Jay, is, if you look at traditional Munster, they did well. They did okay in the competitions they care about, and that's the Heineken Cup. They've never really given a shit about the league. They've always phoned it in. So, you're talking about, should they have let him go? Should they have let him go back in January? Back in January, they wanted him for another 2 years. And they'd offered it to him, and he'd accepted it. So, there's there's an element of being wise after the event. I posited the question earlier. Are Munster a good team let down by poor coaching, a poor team raised up by good coaching, or a mediocre team with a mediocre or an okay team with an okay coach who kind of found their level? And I think that's something we're going to find out next year.
It is, but you made another good point there, just about them never taking the league seriously.
No, they've always phoned it in.
They've always phoned it in. You're dead right, and it's like, if you go back to when Munster were the top dogs and we were, struggling to compete with them, or struggling to get out of our pool occasionally, we always took the league seriously, and I do believe that our small but loyal fan base at the time was founded on our league campaigns, because we weren't doing it in Europe. And there was a band of 20 or 30 used to go away for the odd away game over in Wales, when it was kind of unfashionable to support Leinster, and small acorns grew mighty oaks as the years went on. But we took the league seriously. We were always there. We were challenging in the noughties when our Heineken Cup campaign ended in January. We still were competitive in the league in the May, culminating in that victory in 2008, which was the foundation stone for winning the Heineken Cup the following season. But as I said, we have used that league, and I was just thinking about players that we have brought through, and if you look at the number of caps that some of the guys that are leaving in the summer, how many caps they've got, because we rotated our squad throughout the league. We gave people opportunities. They mightn't feature in the Heineken Cup this season or even next season, but by God, they've built up a great well of experience that come 3 or 4 years down the road, they'll be the stars of the, like you think about, we had Jamie Heaslip and he retired, just suddenly retired in 2017. And because Conan had been given opportunities, and even Dara subsequently had been given league opportunities, it was nearly seamless that they replaced the guy who started in the Lions for two tours. The next tour, there was a there was there was a Leinster guy that was starting at number 8 in South Africa last year. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we were able to keep that production line rolling because of he just wasn't coming from nowhere. He had got maybe 30 or 40 or 50 Leinster appearances by building them up in the league, rather than just been, oh God, what's going to happen? He's abscond. Where are we going to find replacement?
See, that's the big difference, Jason. We say Leinster and Munster have similar sized squads. I think Munster's slightly larger, but I mean it's as little difference as makes no difference. We lose 20 guys or 15 guys to the international squad. They don't lose as many. So the guys we have who are behind the internationals get a lot of game time. Munster have this big squad, this very large squad, and they don't play an awful lot of them an awful lot. So you've got these kind of guys who are sitting there. I mean, and I'm not suggesting this for one moment that they're just sitting there to pick up a pay packet, but they're not getting a whole lot of opportunity. But they're still there, and they're there for 3 and 4 years without, playing a handful of games. And that causes a very bloated, and I can't see it being a very happy squad either.
Well, you've got, take one position, for example. You've got tight head prop, you've got John Ryan leaving. He's had a bad run of, generally between illness and injury, he hasn't always been around. You've got Stephen Archer, who's been around. He's gone over the 200 caps for Munster. He's their second highest capped player. Yeah. And Stephen Archer is what he is. I mean, he's a good pro. He's, I think he might have got an Ireland cap at some point in his, if he has, but he's not you wouldn't call him an international class player. Behind those guys, they've got a fellow they brought in from South Africa, and another fellow that we brought in, or that whatever the IRFU brought in and played with Leinster, Salanoa. So he's Salanoa and Knox. And neither of them have got a fucking sniff this season. They know that John Ryan is away in his toes. They know that Stephen Archer is pretty old, and for a rugby player, he's not got. I think he's got a 1-season extension, so he's probably going to retire in the season. So. What's the plan, lads? They're either going to have to buy in a tight head, which the IRFU don't seem keen on, or they're going to have to play those guys. Well, I've often referenced kind of, if you like, the Darwinian culture in the Munster dressing room, and you look at the books written by former Munster players. They talk about you have to drag the jersey off a guy. And I mean, okay, there's elements of that are good, but there's also elements of it that aren't good, because, your future planning depends on, okay, you've got a good team now. What are you going to have in 2 years? What are you going to have in 4 years? What are you going to have in 6 years? And there doesn't seem to be any insight into that. I mean, I don't think Craig Casey is the Messiah, right? A lot of people do. I don't yet. I don't think we've seen enough of him to say he is, right? But I can't understand why they're playing Conor Murray so much. Because we're not going to get a chance to see whether Craig Casey is the Messiah or not, because we don't see him. He gets 10, 20 minutes at the end of games when the opposition have either won or are beaten. He doesn't get a chance to impose himself on a game, and we say, oh yeah, that's Craig Casey. He is the Messiah. Oh no, that's Craig Casey. He's Brian. You don't get an opportunity to see that because of the way that they always start their starters, Maria. And now there's a question coming up later about central contracts. And I say, do we have to start these guys because they're on central contracts? The IRFU couldn't give a crap, to be perfectly honest. I don't think they care. As long as the guy's Irish qualified, they don't care whether he's on what the headed paper that his signature is on, because it's all coming out of the same pot anyway. It's a cultural thing down there.
It is, and I'll just give you some examples, right? If you take two players, two second rows that were kind of outstanding players when they were on the Irish under-20s team, Thomas Ahern and Ryan Baird. There's 7 months in the age between them. Bird is slightly older. Ryan Bird has 8 Ireland caps. He's made 19 starts for Leinster and 19 appearances off the bench. Thomas Ahern has made 6 starts for Munster and 14 off the bench. So he's only played 20 games at senior level, whereas Ryan Bird has played almost 50. And there's only a few months difference. Likewise, you spoke about Casey. Casey's only made 26 starts in his career for Munster, but he was held up by them picking A.B. Matheson and renewing his contract. And why not give somebody like Casey a go? If you're playing against Glasgow in the URC or Dragons, give Casey a go instead of picking a fella who's 33, who's going to be gone at the end. I was looking back at some match, like they had A.B. Matheson, and whose replacement was your man Duncan Williams, was it? Is that his name?
Munster,
do you know what I mean? Hardly building for the future.
Munster always
that's why Leinster are successful, is because they're building.
Munster always seemed to. I agree with you completely. Munster always seemed to stockpile halfbacks. When Joey Carbery went down there first, he was one of 5 out halves. That's too many. You're talking about, forget about it. I mean, whatever about Albie Madison, whatever about Duncan Williams, right? Okay, so they have Conor Murray and they have Craig Casey, but they were also signing, Rowan Osborne and Paddy Patterson. They had Hugh O'Sullivan down there for a while. Why do they need so many halfbacks?
Yeah, they promoted.
And they had your man Nick Carty as well.
Nick Carty, yeah.
But just going back to Thomas Ahern, he was there. He was a young under 20s prodigy coming through. They bought in RG, right? Fair enough. Super world-class player. Winner, fine.
Can't argue with that.
They also had, right, they bought in Klein and they subsequently bought in Jenkins. So you have this. Then they had Billy Holland, who seemed to go on forever. I know you mentioned last week could have been their best player. Fair enough, right? That's different of opinions. But point is, they're not building for the future. They only are building for the here and now. And going back to the Van Graan thing, it was as though he had to win every match that he played because he seemed to be under pressure all the time, that he had to come in with a bang. Whereas, I don't know, it's not that Leinster didn't put the same pressure on. Of course there's pressure on to win and get results. But you still have to continually build from the foundations up. Otherwise, what's going to happen when all of our team, it's like the soccer team 30 years ago, they all got old together. It's like our team, if you go back to our team that played in, that won the Heineken Cup, 13 years ago, Keane Healy's still there, and who else? That's it, Sexton. Everyone else has been pretty much regenerated from within. It's not like we're not structured that we can go out like Toulon and go and say, let's spend 10 million and buy a load of All Blacks or Springboks. We don't do that. So we gotta build from internally. But like Munster are neither building from internally and then buying pretty average players when they do buy them in. So
I think one thing that
maybe
you were talking about pressure, Jay. And the difference in pressure between, say, Munster and Leinster. In Leinster, the Leinster coaches have a different kind of pressure. Now, it's not it's more of a fan thing that the pressure is on Leinster coaches to pick the younger players nearly. I guarantee you, we're coming up into the game against Bulls, and there'll be somebody somewhere who's going to suggest starting one of the really young guys, because they think they're really good or whatever, and that's fair enough. Whereas in Munster, there's never that pressure. There's never that pressure to start. Nobody's ever going to say to Johan Van Graan, you should be starting Crowley, or that's it's just, there's a different kind of, and then you see it in did you read Thornley this week?
Yep. Talking
about the pressure from the outside investors. That's never a good sign. Sign.
But if you even look at BT, or you watch an interview, they'll say, former powerhouse, or the powerhouse that is Munster or was Munster. Like, you kind of nearly rip that up and say, like, Munster haven't won a tournament in 11 years. They haven't won the Heineken Cup in 14 years. So, like, living on past glories is a recipe for disaster. They need to start going back to basics and saying, let's win the league. Let's concentrate on winning the league. Let's blood a load of players, bring them through. And in 3 or 4 years, when those guys have matured, we're going to have a great squad to challenge in Europe, instead of putting all their eggs into the basket of Europe and then not being quite good enough. Like if you think about when they won it, they had practically the Irish pack, the Irish halfbacks, and a couple of really good centres that chased everything and tackled like demons. Do you know what I mean? They had an all black on the wing.
Well,
it's a weird.
We're in danger of becoming news talk or somebody, and spending our whole Leinster podcast talking about Munster. So,
as I often say, dog bites man is the story. Isn't a story? Sorry, man bites dog. That's a story. And at the moment, Leinster are very much a case of dog bites man. There's very little to actually talk about in terms of Leinster. I mean, we're playing the Bulls the weekend. I can pretty much pick 20 of the 23, and I'd say we'd all agree on it. But maybe we will come back to that. We go. But one thing, Jason, one thing that was interesting about what you're saying about Munster not being a powerhouse anymore, they still kind of are. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, is there any other European team, with the possible exception of ourselves, Toulouse, Saracens maybe, who are regularly in the knockouts as often as Munster? There aren't, either in the league or in Europe. They're still a fairly large-sized dog. And the thing is, I don't think it would take all that much to fix it. The problem is that all the solutions they've come up with so far have been the wrong ones.
Yep.
Yeah. But okay, just going back.
Roundtree
Sorry, John, go on.
It's hard to see Roundtree getting his head either. He seems to be a guy who was up for the job from day one, but wasn't given it until day 26 when everyone else hadn't applied. At least maybe I'm wrong, but that's my perception of it. Now, I'm not saying he won't be good, or I'm not, he seems like a pretty good coach. I'm not trying to denigrate the guy, but he might not have the power, is my thing, to bring in whoever it is to help him out. It looks like they're thrown together. Thrown together is a bit strong, but it looks like they're assembling a kind of like the Dennis Leamy coming in. I think Prendergast coming in, like good guys, but not stellar, shall we say. So it's between that and not having the cattle. I wonder, is Roundtree going to be the man who makes the success? You'll note that Rog isn't coming scurrying back to the province that he loves in the depths of his soul. He's having too good a time elsewhere, and obviously building his career as well. I don't think it's probably the right time for him in his career, regardless of the fact that Munster are not in a good place at the moment. But even if they were in a good place, Rog is only early 40s, so he's or mid 40s maybe he is now. So he's a good bit of his coaching career to go before he hits Munster or Ireland. So maybe it doesn't work for him at the moment. But we'll see. The proof is in the pudding.
I think Roger's playing it very sensibly in terms of whether it's Ulster, Leinster, Munster, or Connacht. If you're a young coach and you're coming back in, okay, Leo Cullen was a bit of an exception because he was there and kind of just never left. If you want to build a name for yourself as a coach, that you build it yourself, you can't really do it in the Irish setup because you've got so many external factors. And I think Rog wants to try it, outside of that setup.
Sure.
He'd be mad to come back.
Yeah.
Well, for several reasons.
But he hasn't gone, and he could have easily got a job as an assistant coach for Munster the day after he retired. And he didn't. He decided to go take a very difficult decision, I'm sure, and say he took a massive reduction in wages. Maybe had to go back with tail between the legs a little bit to become an, defence coach in Racing with Johnny Sexton there. Made a success of it there. Went to New Zealand, uprooted he's a large family, 5 kids, I think. Uprooted them, brought them to the other side of the world for a few years. Brought them back, took a bit of a punt going to La Rochelle. They're only up in the top 14, 3 or 4 seasons, 5 seasons when he moved over. It wasn't like he was going to Clermont or
No.
Toulouse or a team that had a pedigree. He took a big risk, and he's built a great career for himself. He's not going to bloody go back to Munster.
Well, you see,
That's
the
a
thing is,
basket case at the moment.
he may well do.
He might.
Maybe not now.
If he's
maybe,
55.
Yeah, because he spent all. I mean, he made his debut for Munster when he was 18, 19. Played for them until he was 35, 36. It would have been the easy thing for him to do, for him to take off the jersey and throw on the tracksuit and stay where he was, stay in his zone, stay in a safe zone. His reputation will be intact no matter what happened, because he is one of Munster's greatest ever players, perhaps Munster's greatest ever player. There's no way that reputation could ever be damaged unless, he ran naked into Thomond Park and set the place on fire. And even then, the people in Cork could be fairly happy with him. So there was no way he couldn't lose there, but he couldn't win either, because it would be a sinecure, So he made that decision. And as you say, he tested himself. He took the risk. And that's got to be very, very admirable. So now he knows that he is as good as, an out half. An out half always thinks of the greatest things in sliced bread. He knows as a coach he is as good as he thinks he is, kind of thing. So now maybe he can come home if he wants to, or he doesn't have to, but he can if he wants to. And he can do it in the full knowledge that he can do it. It's not. He can do it in the full knowledge that it's not just because he's Ronan O'Gara of Munster.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, be interesting times in ahead. But just turning back our attention very briefly just towards that Ulster match. Couple of outstanding performance. Thought Balakoon was brilliant, and Hume once again.
Yeah.
Ultra impressive. Like that lad is pushing very hard for that 13 spot in Ireland. Obviously Ringrose has a lot of the obviously he's got a lot of caps built up over the last 5 years or so. But tell you what, you want to be looking over his shoulder at Hume, because he's putting in some great displays.
Yeah, Ringrose has played really, really well over the last couple of months, and I don't think the form of James Hume is entirely unconnected to that. He's had to lift his game, because Hume has been, over the course of the season, perhaps the outstanding player. Certainly Ulster's outstanding player. He's just been very, very good. I imagine what he'd be good, how good he'd be with a decent inside centre.
Wouldn't you just? Oh, just one thing. Do you remember the first try that Cooney scored? Just there was a fight. Like I would have expected Munster to have scored a try like that 15 years ago.
That was very much the kind of try that Peter Stringer would have taken advantage of.
Yeah, with Alan Quinlan throwing digs and three people trying to beat him up and been distracted. But Munster got suckered into it, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Big time.
But I think that reflected their entire attention on that game. It was, their heads were not where they should have been for a game of that magnitude.
Yeah. But look, I suppose they can just press the reset button now, and they've got the summer to think about it. But that's two competitions that they exited at the quarterfinal stage. That's a very poor season for Munster in there by their standards.
Yeah,
they normally get
as they see themselves. I'd say that would be a poor return on the season. I mean, for a lot of clubs, that'd be a deadly season.
It would,
getting knocked out of the quarterfinals in Europe on penalties against one of the great teams of Europe, and getting to the knockouts of your league. There's a lot of clubs in the top 14 and the Premiership and the United Rugby Championship who'd say, okay, that's a pretty good season. It's not a great season, but it's a pretty good season. But for Munster and their self-image, I don't think it is that good a season. But I mean, fair play to Ulster. Ulster have been. That was a game Ulster needed, because I mean, even when they went 2 or 3 tries up, I was kind of thinking, right, how are Ulster going to blow this? Who's going to throw a stupid dig and get sent off, or what stupid kick getting blocked down, or Munster going to score a try and it'll change the whole game? Because we've seen that happen with Ulster, particularly against Munster, an awful lot. We saw it happen earlier this season. We saw it happening. Ulster nearly threw it away against the Sharks. Was it 2 weeks ago? They have this ability to find, with an erring accuracy, their own feet. So it was a big game for Ulster to win, because that was, they got it over the line, and they got it over the line in style. Now, whatever about Munster's attitude, it's the same kind of for Leinster. Ulster can't force the opposition to be on it. All they can do is take advantage of them if they aren't, and that's what they did.
True. So our opponents are the Bulls. They had a last-minute dropper to beat the Sharks. I watched the first half of that, and then I had to go to leave the house to go to the match, and Bulls seemed to be winning pretty comfortably. I think they were 27-10 when I left, and then they seemed to concede a couple of tries to the Sharks, and then a last minute dropper to win it. So they've both them and Ulster obviously have to make the long trip down to South Africa. I just checked there. I think it's a 12-hour flight. John, you were down there recently. It's what, 12 hours from London down to Cape Town.
It is. Durban, or sorry, Pretoria. It's slightly closer, but you probably have to go through Johannesburg and London to get to Dublin. There's no direct flights to anywhere in South Africa from Dublin, and I'd say Pretoria is a little puddle hop to Joburg and then on to London and then Dublin. So it's Cape Town is a direct flight, but it's 12 hours, so it's kind of 6 of 1. You know, it's probably easier from Cape Town, to be fair, because of the direct flight. But yeah, I wouldn't fancy doing that and playing a game of rugby all in a 6-day period since the last game of rugby. So it's definitely a disadvantage. And if you remember over the years in Super Rugby, whoever had to make the big long journey in the finals, now you've also got jet lag on those journeys because they're east-west rather than north-south. But you know, whoever makes the big long journey is at a significant disadvantage. Not just the home and away normal stuff you have in our league or in the league in the same country like that.
When did they fly, John? Do you know?
I don't honestly know, but you would have thought that they'd fly a little bit earlier.
Yeah, to my mind, it would make more sense if they were to fly almost immediately after or as early as they could, once they found out who they were playing, kind of thing. Yeah. Make that flight and then settle in.
Although,
because you're not, as you say, there's no jet lag. So if you could, get them, if you can make the flight, whether you're Ulster going down or Thingy coming up, if you can make the flight, get your kip in, and then you have it nearly a week to settle into your new surroundings.
The other side of that, though, is remember the gossip around Toulouse staying between the Munster and Leinster games. That it would have cost. Somebody said it would have cost them $1 million to stay for them.
Just as a by the by, right? Kerry were playing up a match up in Dublin just at the weekend, and the Kerry County Board. The accommodation was so expensive in Dublin that the Kerry County Board actually chartered a flight to bring the players home down to Kerry.
Well, there you go.
After the game, do you know what I mean? It was obviously cheaper to charter an aircraft rather than put the lads up in a hotel for overnight.
Well, I've certain experience of looking at for hotels over the next couple of weeks, and I'll tell you, we're into spare kidney jobs. It's the price of hotels in Dublin is just crazy at the moment, but that's what it is. So I mean, it's going to be interesting. I was looking at the teams, the Bulls team that we beat the first match of the season, and beat handily enough. And the Bulls
31-3.
Yeah, 31-3, and the Bulls team that lost or that beat Sharks at the weekend. And the only real changes are back in September, they had Bismarck Duplessis at hooker. They had Johan Goosen, who, if you remember, of Racing 92 legal action fame, at out half. And then at the weekend, they had Johan, I've forgotten his surname, at hooker, and they had Chris Smith at out half, and they switched around some of the backs. So the teams aren't very, very different. So what we've seen, I was thinking about what the big difference is on the bench. Bulls have a much stronger bench now than they had back in September, and they're kind of used to the environment of the United Rugby Championship now. They're used to how the game, what the refereeing director, how they tells the refs to ref the games, all that kind of stuff. So there's a new kind of comfort in it. But the teams weren't all that different.
Well, I just had a look at. John, I just had a look at our team. So we had 9 starters from the Heineken Cup final. And Keenan, Ringrose, Lowe, Sexton, Porter, Maloney, Ryan, Van der Fleer and Darius all started. And there was 5 of the reserves also started 5 of the reserves from the Heineken Cup final. So like we played practically our first team, with a couple of exceptions. So we fielded a very strong team that day back in September as well.
Yeah.
The main difference between the Bulls team that I could see last Saturday anyway, and the Bulls team from that first game of the season is the bench. Their bench is much stronger. They've guys like Papier and guys like that on the bench. It's a much more stronger bench than the one that we saw. But I'm looking at them. I mean, this is the one thing I'd say about Bulls. It's a great team and all that, but I mean, Arno Botha, really?
Well, the Bulls, the big thing the Bulls have that they didn't have in September is a massive amount of experience in the URC.
Yeah.
And B, in form. They've really been in good form. They've won a huge proportion of, I don't think it might be 10 out of 11 of their last games, something like that. So they're in a good place. They're kind of they're not full of springboks like the Sharks, for example, to compare them to their opponents in the quarterfinal. However, they have a much bigger pack, and they will have watched Rodgers' men take us apart in the Heineken Cup final, and they'll know what to do against us. Whether they'll be able to pull it off is another matter, but they'll know what to do, and they've got the pack to go at us as well to really put it up to us and contest breakdowns and deny us quick ball, all that kind of stuff that it takes to beat us. Plus, they'll be underdogs and they'll be coming in under the radar for a lot of people. It's a good place to be mentally, not having a lot to lose. Whereas we don't tend to react. Irish teams generally don't tend to react well as favourites, as evidenced by the Heineken Cup final. When the pressure comes on us, we just have to turn up and beat these guys. It's quite often the day that we don't. So there's a massive banana skin there for Leinster. I'm not saying they're going to lose by any means. In fact, I think they're going to win. But, if we played this game against the Bulls 10 times, we might only win 8 of them. And if we get the day where, I'd say maybe the same about La Rochelle, we might win 6 or 7 out of 10 against La Rochelle. But the day that we played them was day 8, 9, whatever it was. So if we have a game like that against the Bulls, it's going to be a long day. The advantage is what we've said. They have a huge journey ahead of them. We're at home in the RDS, sleeping in our own beds. Got the crowd. Speaking of the crowd, I think we were discussing this earlier in the day. There are not very many tickets sold. It could be as bad as last week, but it looks like what I'm looking at. On Ticketmaster, there's seats available pretty much everywhere. Even in the center of the grandstand, there's tickets in every hole and corner of the ground. So hopefully that changes. But it's only 2 days away to the game. So as we're recording this, so we might not have the biggest crowd to deal with it. So few chinks there that they might go to work on, but. Hopefully we'll have too much for them.
Yeah, it always puzzles me. I mean, I can understand. I completely understand why people spend a lot of money over the last couple of months on a lot of things, and the cost of living increases and all that kind of stuff. Sport kind of does sometimes. Your entertainment budget sometimes has to take a hit, and that's fine.
But it's 25 quid.
Yeah, it's 25 quid, John. 25 quid is still 25 quid if you don't have it. If you've only got 1 quid, it's 24 quid you don't have, It's like those, do you remember those guys we met, Jason? Do you remember those guys we met over in Clonethy? Who, when they moved from Stratty Park to Parky Scarlets, they couldn't afford to go anymore because what money they had for their entertainment was match ticket, bus, and a pint, or match ticket and a pint. Now they had to get a bus out to the ground.
And the pints are more expensive.
I'm not suggesting. I'm not saying that. Look, I'm not trying to make out that Leinster supporters are all ragged trousered types or whatever. But I mean, people have cost of living, and they do have purchasing decisions and choices that they have to make. And sometimes sports that you can watch on the television anyway, maybe has to take a back seat. But
it's a cumulative thing as well. There's been
Go on.
No, I was just going to say it's a cumulative thing. We've had quite a few knockout games in the last, I can't remember now, but probably since probably since April, all of the matches haven't been covered by our. We've played. Okay, there was the Munster match. Obviously, was part of the season ticket, but we played the Connacht match in the round of 16. We had the quarterfinal. Sorry, if you did travel to Leicester, that was obviously a away trip you had to work out for. The semi-final was in Toulouse. I think it was Toulouse that you had to pay for. The Glasgow match last weekend, similarly, didn't come out of your season ticket. So there's additional costs that you also got to renew your season ticket in and around this time of the year. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of kind of whatever you might have budgeted on your rugby spend. There's a lot of additional costs coming through in the last few. And maybe people are going, well, I'll go to the final. I'll skip this one. I don't know, but hopefully anyway, people will buy the tickets and make.
Just from my point of view, just from a kind of, if you like, the perspective of someone who remembers watching, Currie Cup rugby on Rugby Special on the Sunday afternoon. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing, Blue Bulls or, whatever, Northern Transvaal, on my pitch. I'm really looking it was great in the Aviva, but it wasn't my pitch. The RDS is, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that, because that's kind of, it's something it's a significant thing.
Yeah, but they're kind of a legendary team, and
and just going back to what we're talking about, form and selection and stuff like that, right? The Blue Bulls are a club that knows how to win things. They're very good at winning things.
I was going to say that because they were one of the outstanding teams. In fact, they're probably the team that did stand up to the New Zealand teams. I think was it 3 or 4 Super Championships they won in a row, and they had Backy's Boats playing for them, and
Victor.
Know what I mean, they were practically Victor, and they were as you say, a powerhouse. So as you say, great to see them in our patch and in our stadium, in a game that's winner takes all. Obviously, it's a knockout match, semi-final. It doesn't really get much bigger than this, because the winner gets into the final and the loser goes home.
Well, if you, this kind of justifies the whole South African expansion into the United Rugby Championship. I can understand why people might have a thing about it, because it's not really part of the Celtic League and a different rugby. But, this kind of, for me anyway, the idea that, a team like Blue Bulls, we play my team in a knockout, as you say, knockout, winner takes all on our patch. That's kind of cool.
It is. It is indeed. It'll be a great weekend of sport, those 2 games. Dave, do we have any questions from our viewer?
We have a lot of questions from our viewer. He's been a busy man. He's been typing his fingers to the bone. Okay, so Old School Socks asks, he has 2 questions, actually. Okay, who do the panel prefer and why? Larmour versus O'Brien. I presume he means Jimmy rather than Tommy.
He's the fit one, apart from anything else.
Yeah.
Who do I prefer? That's a real, I'm going to say horses for courses here. Jimmy O'Brien is more versatile, can play 15 better, can play 13 as well. So he's a great guy to have at 23. That's what we're auditioning for. If we're auditioning for somebody who can go out and grab a game by the scruff of the neck and finish off a load of tries or create them, as you've said earlier, Dave, you're looking at Larmour. However, who scored 4 tries in Bath? Jimmy O'Brien. So in some ways there isn't a fag paper between them, but it's what type of game you want to play. If you want to play a game where you're going to be, if they're both at 20, if you're auditioning one of them at 23, do you want a game where somebody's going to come on and rip things up, run around with their head on fire and score tries? You might pick Larmour, and if you want a form pick, he's in great form. If you want a versatile player who can play 15, 11, 13, 15, 14, you've got Jimmy O'Brien. So
I would point out, John, if you remember the try with which Jordan Larmour first announced himself, it's not the Munster try. It was a try against Ulster up in Ravenhill, where he was playing at 13.
Yeah, he has played 13 very occasionally. I suppose Jimmy O'Brien's only played there occasionally himself.
So this is a multi-part question. John, Jay, do you want to take this one? Because this one's more forward-oriented. And I know you've little or no interest in what happens once a guy gets double figures on his back.
Unless it's 16, 17 or 18.
Kelleher versus Sheehan.
Well, I have to say Sheehan. I just think he's exceptional. And I don't know, I texted somebody at the weekend saying, I hope whoever his agent has managed to put a clause in his contract for try scores, because he must be one of the leading scorers in the club.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let you lead on this one.
I mean, I know.
Go on.
Go on, sorry. All right.
I'll let you lead on this one as well, Jay, because it is still single digits, although we might let James May there have a say. It's Doris versus Conan at 8.
I love Doris. I just think he's the most dynamic number 8 we have in the club. And I think if he hadn't have been injured with his concussion last season's Six Nations, I think it might have been him that went on the Lions and started for the Lions rather than Conan.
I kind of agree with you. I think Conan's a wonderful player as well, by the way. I think he's a really good number 8, and he gets off the back of a scrum really, really well. But I think we might have been seeing the exact same selection in the back row, but I think we could have been seeing Conan, because Conan had started to play 6 a fair bit. I think we could have been seeing Conan as the regular 6 and Doris as the regular 8. But so part B to that question is Doris versus Ruddock at 6.
You go for that one, John.
Well, that's coming into my head when you said about Jack Conan perhaps being the man who was nailing down 6, because they're both 8s, Doris and Conan. So one of them is going to be pushed to 6 rather than by choice. Ruddock, though, geez, he's such a club stalwart. You know, he's a guy you want in your team. You know, he gets stuck in. He's been captain quite a lot of, he's captain material. So again, it depends on what you want in your team. Do you want a guy who's going to come on and, captain the team, whether he's the leader of the forwards? Then you've got James Ryan, who's been more recently captain. So, depends on what you want. I see it that if you didn't have, if either of those are injured, either of those number 8s are injured, Ruddock is going to start at 6, Now, Ryan Baird all of a sudden looks like he's going to be tried at 6. Ryan Baird's a funny one in the equation, because his physique is somewhere in between second row and 6. Like Rocky Elsom was 6'6", big, very big.
Different build though.
Second row, different build maybe, but it's very hard to, like, it's so many people are converging on this 6 jersey. Conan because Doris because he's been pushed out by Conan, and Ruddock, that's his natural position. And then you've got Ryan Baird kind of converging. It's like Doris and Baird are converging from different directions on the 6 jersey. So it's an awful headache who you're going to put where.
And Gibson Park versus McGrath.
No contest anymore, is there?
No, I don't think so. Next question from Old School Socks. On the scale of Janie Mack to actually rolling on the floor laughing, exactly how funny was the handbags try that Ulster scored versus Munster last week?
Hilarious.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious too. Jason, are you still there? Have we lost you?
I am, yeah. No, I'm still here. No, I was just thinking. I think I said it earlier. Like, that reminded me so much of a try that Munster would have scored back in the day, when would have been stringer sniping, and there would have been some of the Leamys or the Quinlans causing the mayhem and inciting a row. The people would be distracted. Do you remember Fabian Pelouse? Fabian Pelouse kicked Quinlan up the backside, and in the Heineken Cup final, and got yellow carded. For being provoked or doing a stupid thing like that. But Toulouse were down to 14 forwards for 10 minutes. Yeah.
Question from Ronk. A year out from the World Cup, who goes on the New Zealand tour? Do you rest older players like Earls to give them an early preseason? Who do you give a chance to bolt? What other options are there? One thing I think about this tour, if this was just a 3-game tour, yeah, you just do the normal thing of picking a squad for those 3 games for the tests, and you could afford to experiment a little bit, but not too much. But I think that because of the two midweek games against the Maori, I think we'll see a very large squad go, and I think we'll see a lot of the experienced guys who mightn't be considered starters anymore in the test team been brought to give a bit of support to younger players against the Maori in the midweek test. So, for example, Peter O'Mahony will probably captain the team against the Maori.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, I'd love to see them give. I mentioned it earlier. I'd love to see them give those two Ulster backs even a chance to start in a test match. I'm not sure they will get a chance to start in a test match against the All Blacks, but certainly they've been in that environment for whatever it is, a month, will give them a huge amount of experience. But like, they are a very exciting couple of young players that they have up there, and as you kind of said it jokingly, but it would be great to see Hume play with the first choice back line and a killer pack.
Yeah, but you can imagine
an international standard pack.
You can imagine four centres going out there, right? You're talking, Bundy Aki, Robbie Henshaw, James Hume, and Gary Ringrose, right? He's going to play with one of the best. He's going to play with a Lions inside centre one way or another.
There's bolters being answered. Poor old Ron K gets called Ronk by everybody, but anyway, there's a few bolters there. You've mentioned James Hume. I'd stick Joe McCarthy in there as a possible bolter.
Yeah. Definitely. I think Mike Haley's going to go.
Really?
Yeah, I think he's been outstanding. I think he's been Munster's best player this year. I'm being quite serious. I know you're waiting for the punchline. I think he's been excellent. He's an out and out fullback, but he's back. I mean, we've been talking about fullbacks who are playmakers and fullbacks who are, are they an actual fullback or just a backstreet player? He's an actual fullback, and I think you should always have one of those guys in your quiver, as it were. And I think he's been one of Munster's best players this season. I think he's got power, he's got pace. Might be needed against the Maori or the All Blacks,
Does that mean you're going to stop calling him England's Mike Haley?
I actually had taken to calling him England and Ireland's Mike Haley once he got capped by Ireland.
Britain and Ireland. Mike Haley.
I see Jack Carty.
Isn't he virtually a line?
So Jack Carty's dropped out. He's got injured, so he's so that's going to add even more kind of pressure on the out half position.
Well, on that very thing, what I was going to say, he asked a question about Keith Earls the likes of Keith Earls being rested to get a good pre-season ahead of their World Cup season. There's a big carrot out there for, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about it later, after the two URC games, or potentially two URC games are out of the way. But there's a big carrot there, because New Zealand, while they're always awesome, they're probably in their least awesome phase just about
at this point.
And there's a possibility of going down there and winning a test, whether it's the first, second, or third, So he's not going to rest Johnny Sexton, for example. He's not going to rest. He might rest Keith Earls, but he's not going to rest a lot of his top team, because there's going to be an opportunity to take a scalp, and that will be huge.
In fairness, John, even taking a Maori scalp is huge for us.
Well, if you remember England going down there in 2002 or so, and they won in Wellington with 13 men. The lads came trotting back and that was huge for their mindset going into the World Cup in Australia, which they subsequently won. So I can see very few essential players, aka Sexton, being left behind in this tour. I think it's going to be.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a big squad. So there's going to be an element of anyone who's fit and standing kind of is going to go anyway. Out half is interesting, as you say, with Jack Carty going. Billy Burns could well go. He's been playing very, very well for Ulster. He's a player who doesn't do much flash, but he doesn't do anything badly either.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you can make his touch.
Yeah. I don't think I think he's just a shade below international level for me. He's good. He's a good player, not a great player.
The question is, though, like Jason says, if he could make his touch, and that's a valid point, looking back. But you have that kind of against him. Ross Byrne doesn't do an awful lot. Isn't a very physical player, for want of a better phrase. Joey Carberry is Joey Carberry, and then you've got Johnny. So I mean, your choices behind Johnny Sexton, who's the only, I think, really international class out half we currently have.
Yep. Sadly.
The rest of them are all good players, and that's fine, but they're not Bowden Barrett and they're not Johnny Sexton.
No, and it's going to be a vast hole that emerges, unless somebody's going to come out of nowhere in the next season and a half. It's a big hole when the World Cup is over.
Another one from Ron Kay. Will the Bulls treat this game as Heineken Cup intensity? They're a bit of an unknown. Yeah, I think they will. I think they're up to speed now. I think we discussed that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If they can get over their travel.
Yeah, the travel would be the thing. Linebreak asks.
If they win, they get a home final, I think. I'd have to check that, but I think they do. So
Mondown, we have to motor through these.
Harry.
I said I haven't watched Obi-Wan, this week's episode of Obi-Wan yet. Linebreak asks, thoughts on the central contracting system? It used to be about contracting the guaranteed starters, but lately we've had Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray and Earls all get their contracts renewed, while European Player of the Year Van der Fleer is on a provincial contract. Yeah, I mean, it used to be a thing that they were essentially contract, which meant that Eddie O'Sullivan owned them. It's not the way it is now. I think central contracting is a way of taking pressure off budgets of provinces. It's just a way of keeping guys on the payroll without the provinces having to pay for them. I don't think it actually makes any difference. I
think that it's a way that the provinces, it's, as you say, it saves them the cash, and it also ensures that, like, could you imagine if Munster had to let Peter O'Mahony go because they couldn't afford him?
Yeah, I mean, people.
I mean, like,
people forget about
the negative PR.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Within the province,
people forget about how valuable that is. I mean, there is a cash value behind goodwill. Jason, as an accountant yourself, that there is a cash value assigned to it. So that kind of thing. Do we need a big bruiser / enforcer of a stadium announcer to beat the big French teams? I just think we need a different one from last week.
Yeah,
was his first go though?
It was his first go, so we'll give him that. What else have we got? Is the lack of tough games causing issues in the latter stages of Europe?
No.
Tough games in the league causing.
Maybe.
I don't think so. We've got 3 European Cup finals in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think it would help if we went back to the old schedule where we kind of played Munster before our first game in Europe and played Munster before our first knockout game in Europe, and we played them, as it were. I think that would be more helpful. But then, I don't know.
Maybe not anymore because they're not as much of a challenge as they were 5-10 years
Yeah,
ago.
and there's still that mental thing, John, about Munster and Ulster. Munster and Leinster is a game that exists in its own bubble, regardless of how good the teams actually are. I mean, there was still all I mean, we sent out a second / third team against them the other day, and beat them well. But the next game that comes around will still be a huge game. It'll still be the biggest game of the season. It'll still be shown live in New Zealand and all this kind of stuff. So, does anyone know? Yeah, that's a good question. What's the relevance to 10-14 and the 10-14 group of Munster's private backers?
Battle of Clontarf?
That's what I thought. That it was the last time, because Munster beat the men of Leinster that day.
Yeah. So
I presume that's what it is. I can't think of anything else. Okay, so that's those. We've got more. Brendan Lawler asks, we know what Jordan Glamour can do in loose games where he can run at opposition, but how does he fare in tight on the back foot games? Would a forwards-dominated Bulls game plan work in his favour? Jake White is going to try and negate our fast-tempo game after all, because that's what Jake White does.
Yep.
I think if those big lumbering Springbok forwards come at Jordan Larmour, they might find themselves wishing they'd practiced more against Cheslin Colby when he was in the country.
Yeah, he slapped them and make them look silly.
Yeah, I'm just checking.
He's slightly weak though when it comes to fielding high balls.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, I would concede that. All right, I'm just looking for one more, because I can't remember where I saved it. It's this high technology, fast paced social media whirl, Jason.
You should just write it down.
Who even does that?
Jason, I swear to God, right? This is my desk. I'm sitting at my desk right now, and the only pen I can see is this one, right? And do you know what that is? That's a bloody Apple pencil. It's no good for writing stuff down. No, that's all our questions. I think that's every question our viewer asked.
Very good. They were very good questions.
They were great questions. Actually, it's nice when you get a good bunch because you can get a good chat going, even if I haven't watched Obi-Wan and the first 2 episodes of Miss Marvel.
Jeez, Jason, Dave, your pants are on fire to get out of this thing now. Like all of a sudden, like where you're normally sitting back wanting to chat for hours, you're like.
I know. I am conscious of the fact that we don't want to bore our viewers to death because I mean we've already lost. Yeah, well, that's true. I don't want to bore them too much to death. Although I do think we brought them an interesting choice of t-shirts this week. John has his kind of psychedelic Jimi Hendrix t-shirt, and I've gone for the old punk CBGB.
The hippies and the punks.
Very good.
2 eras clashing.
Very good, lads. In future, I must try and get myself Echo and the Bunnyman t-shirt. Anyway, boys, as ever, thanks very much. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening. If you are following us on Facebook or on Twitter, please give us a like and subscription. Thanks again. Cheers.